Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session. This is really a special session. It is about bridges. But what kind of bridges? In a world where all the barriers have disappeared, barriers of time and space, the world has now become a small village. Just by the touch of a button, we can really know what happens in the most distant places. We can see with our eyes, we can hear with our ears, and we can announce to the world what we think of the destiny of something as big as the Earth that is dying in terms of the environment. Or we can do the same about the destiny of a newborn that is dying in a hospital bed. So, why should we need to have builders of bridges? Why do we need them in a world where the barriers of space and time have fallen? This question embodies the challenge that we would like to propose to the participants in this session, because the non-conventional reality in which we live in imposes to pose questions and find answers that are non-conventional. At present, the cultural context is known as the information era. What is information? Information is knowledge without human experience, because information together with experience makes knowledge. Today we need bridges between education and knowledge, information and knowledge, that is the experience of people. Today we live in an era of post. Around us everything is post, postmodernism, post-industrialism, post-Marxism, post-colonialism. But what is the meaning of this term, post? This term indicates our inability to give a name to what we experience today. Building bridges and going back to this ability to name what we know. Why aren't we able to name the cultural condition in which we live today? It is not really possible to generate a meaning of life about both big and small things. Generating meaning is the real challenge we face today. The Rimini meeting is the best way to do this, because the most important feature of this space is that it is a space of testimony. Testimony of good, testimony of beauty, testimony of a truth that each of us has encountered in their own life. The challenge of this session is to make these testimonies able to generate meaning, because the Rimini meeting is a testimony that generates other testimonies. For this, we have invited high-profile guest speakers, and they have very high-level roles, but that's not all. Their high level also concerns their person and their testimony of beauty and good. Today, we are here because the bridge that we want to build is a bridge between these different bridges, the institutional one and the personal one, both at the highest level. There should be a bridge between these two dimensions. Today with us, we have His Excellency Secretary General of the Muslim World League. It is the first time that he is at the meeting. But as he confirmed, after seeing the testimony of the volunteers, of those who set up the exhibitions, of those people who work here, he confirmed that this won't be the last time. So he already asked to come back in the future. With us, there is also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of San Marino, who has a very special place in the heart of the Rimini meeting because of the long friendship that contributed to the Rimini meeting and also contributed to the character of the meeting itself. So we have His Excellency Nicola Renzi. There's also Dr. Khaled Azab, who is the head of the Library of Alexandria. And to go back to the kind of testimony that the meeting endorses, you will remember that last year, Dr. Mustafa El-Feiti was here, the president of the library. And this year we have Dr. Khaled Azab, the head of the projects and the communication of the library. In these two sessions at the meeting with their testimony, many things happen. After having Dr. Mustafa El-Feiti here, he asked the meeting to be presented at the Library of Alexandria. So the next October, the 22nd, we will go to Alexandria. We will bring our testimony there. And also Dr. Khaled Azab. He is really a special person. He is a reader of the beauty in stone. His academic commitment, his research, is to read history and civilization in Islamic architecture and the relation between the architecture and Islamic law. So I gave him a gift, the book by Julian Carron, The Disarmed Beauty, and he was impressed by this book. So he decided to translate the book, and the book will be published this fall, and it will be published by the Library of Alexandria. I say these things to emphasize something that is really important. We always have to remember that we're not here to have a congress or to have a session and then go back home very happy to forget about, after a couple of days, what we have listened to here, what we find here, the people that come here bring this testimony that flourish in many, many places outside the trade show facilities of Rimini. Our fourth guest speaker is very well known by the friends of the Rimini meeting, Mr. Roberto Fontolan. He is director of the International Center of Communion and Liberation.
È un grande amico e oggi è presente.
He is a great friend and he is present today to present his friendship and our friendship with a very important figure. But before getting to the very dear Roberto Fontolan, we invite His Excellence, Dr. Nicola Renzi, to give his remarks and to describe this very long-standing experience of friendship between the Rimini meeting and the Republic of San Marino.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for bearing witness of a very long-lasting relation based on the opportunity to give the floor to anyone and to state that the link between the meeting and the Republic of San Marino has been lasting for years, and I hope it will continue for a long time. Our world is torn by blind violence. A violence that has also struck the heart of your beloved land. Our world needs peace, love, and mercy. It needs peacemakers, people who are free and who set others free, men and women of courage who can learn from the past in order to build a future free of every form of prejudice. Our world needs people who can build the bridges of peace, dialogue, fraternity, justice, and humanity. These were the words with which Pope Francis greeted the Egyptian people in his visit last year in this land of strong Muslim and Christian presence, a cradle of civilization and privileged observatory for the great topics recalling today's paths towards coexistence and reconciliation, friendship and acknowledgement of religious and cultural pluralism. This is a message of hope and peace launched by the Holy Father in Egypt, because today I'm here with very distinguished representatives of this culture, and we are here in the presence of the most important world Muslim authority, which will represent the current choices to highlight the openness to dialogue of Islam and the will to build bridges of dialogue and union. I'm really grateful to the friends of the meeting for providing the Republic of San Marino the opportunity to talk about these topics. The meeting of Rimini has been working hard on this in order to find synergies that through dialogue can promote knowledge and acknowledge diversity. This session focuses basically on culture, because we speakers are called upon to talk about the new strategies of how to build bridges to go beyond indifference, uncertainties, and fear by recovering the deep meaning of human existence. First of all, I want to recall the most important steps taken by the Republic of San Marino to state the principles of dialogue as a tool to settle dispute and as a guideline recalled in every national and international forum, and the ability to be negotiators of people through an open dialogue between peoples, cultures, and religions. San Marino has always had a strong tendency to peace. And it is firmly against the use of weapons and violence. Its history is characterized by different actions and principles inspired by the primacy of political dialogue and diplomacy in order to bring back peace and in order to contribute to political solutions in a multilateral context. The topic of dialogue between peoples, religions, and cultures is part and parcel of the political and institutional debate and in the life of the citizens in San Marino. It is a pretty much debated topic, promoting different debates and in-depth analysis in international level, acknowledging San Marino a role of international crossroads of cultural, religious, and social dialogue. San Marino has been, and it still is, in different multilateral fora, especially within the Council of Europe, a leading negotiator to promote dialogue among cultures and religions as a tool for education and peace that can overcome ideological mistrusts, that can provide courage in the fight against any form of bias, intolerance, and exclusions that can jeopardize coexistence among peoples. The meetings of the Council of Europe on the religious dimension of the intercultural dialogue have been promoted by San Marino for more than 10 years now. These are pan-European debates which today more than ever prepare for a global debate. San Marino has been sponsoring for years events where there is an exchange of different representatives of different thoughts, ideologies, different creeds, to search for the development of new societies which are more inclusive, which are culturally open to change. Today, we live through a real media and cultural chaos in relation to the much debated ability to welcome and integrate people which are not fed by a suitable culture based on meeting and coexistence. The delicate international situation, significant migratory flows, the fear of terrorism, the non-specific language of the new media just build new barriers leading to mutual misunderstanding. In addition to that, there's a sort of historical paradox where today Europe is divided. Before this scenario, every stakeholder of the civil society is called upon to be brave and to carry out sustainable ethical actions in order to overcome biases and to be ready and open to others, convinced that tolerance on its own is not enough. Respecting others does not only mean accepting their presence and tolerate coexistence. It requires respect. And it requires a real interest in the different peculiarities and an in-depth knowledge that has to be achieved by new and suitable tools. This is the prerequisite leading us to acknowledge that the modern era is an extraordinary opportunity for enrichment for every state, people and individual. Only after knowing other it is possible to go beyond stereotypes and build up real bridges of dialogue. I am proud to belong to a historical and political tradition which is deeply rooted in undeniable principles and values. So in order to do that, we have to start from our own identity, from the cultural and spiritual historical heritage of people, countries, and ethnic groups, because in order to get to know one another, we need to be strong and we need to believe in our roots, although they can change continuously. The dialogue happens between people, even before between religions, histories, and culture. These people have to be educated to dialogue while questioning their mental categories and world visions. This is why in the Republic of San Marino, we are deeply attached to the same concept of freedom and respect for fundamental human rights. And we're called upon to build the bridges of dialogue for our societies and future generations. The network of institution has to continue to ensure the common well-being and the common good by recalling solidarity, which is so necessary for the people who want to open up to new horizons. The challenge launched by the meeting in this session leaves the speakers the possibility to identify paths of knowledge, helping mankind to overcome barriers, uncertainties, and the fear of others. This is a challenge that has to be tackled because it goes beyond man. It is characterized by the desire to find out possible human coexistence without any mental resistance. The new technologies and the possibility to see the current trends at global level lead to the need for building bridges where there's no longer barriers in terms of space and time, but awareness needs to lead to knowledge. Let me also underline the need for the new media not to twist the truth and jeopardize the same concept of freedom. The Republic of San Marino has greatly contributed at international level to correct information, which has to replace fake news, which is a misleading and uncontrolled phenomenon because it can promote hatred and biases. Political and institutional actions have to acknowledge the richness of diversities, which are real potential at human, social, economic, cultural, and religious level. So we need to work for the full development of us all. And we have to work on the milestones such as freedom, equality, and brotherhood. Each one of us is called upon to have a new ability of assessment, a new vision, which is not always clear at an international level. I believe that today we need to find leadership who is able to guide, to lead, and provide future hope. This is why I'm going to use the words used by this meeting a few years ago by the facilitator of today's panel, Professor Wael Farouq, calling us to fill up vacuums with the presence, aware that hatred and biases are fed by the vacuum and grow up in the vacuum. We need to be present and we need to be witnesses of changes in society in order to lead them and not to suffer from them. This is essential. It's not just the institutional leaders, but the society as a whole to do that, because it needs today more than ever to interact with the new challenges in order to promote knowledge and to recover trust. I would like to conclude by recalling all the relations linked in the ancient Republic of San Marino and its different communities of citizens scattered around the world that up to the era of globalization were united to San Marino only by sentimental links. Today, the virtual bridges between the countries of origins and the communities scattered in different continents have given way to the speed of information. Common ideals have been strengthened, as well the same deep identity, which have always been based on permanent and constructive dialogue, which is a tool for union and solidarity. And it is with this spirit that I hope that there will be a wider mobilization towards a global order, replacing the culture of indifference with peace operators that slowly but surely can build up sound bridges based on brotherhood and peace among peoples and nations. Thank you.
I believe that all these values, going beyond the prejudices and the stereotypes, beginning with identity, the culture of encounter, all these values are truly present as testified by the constant presence of the Republic of San Marino at the meeting. So thank you very much, Minister. Now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Khaled Azab. But before giving him the floor, I would like to ask him a question. The Nazi secret police used to count on a small number of officers. If we consider the number of citizens, living in the city that they were supposed to control, about 1 million people, just 28 officers. How is it possible that such a small number of officers was enough? Well, that's because many inhabitants used to report voluntarily any kind of suspect they might have had. And also, they used to report the things that they didn't like. The secret police would then act on the basis of these reports that were submitted by people that perhaps simply just didn't like a neighbor or the way of behaving of a certain seller. So many people lost their lives in the concentration camps just because somebody didn't like someone else. They didn't like the way they were living. So how come? How come a certain culture can build a wall, can build walls, not just between people, but especially between men and their humanity? So building bridges means not just encountering the other, but most importantly, it means to create a certain setting in which these walls cannot separate us from our humanity. The Library of Alexandria today in Egypt is fighting against many walls. In addition to the role played in terms of international and cultural dialogue, there's also a very important role in Egyptian society that I hope Dr. Khaled Azab will present today for us. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wael Farouq. I would like to thank the organizers of the Rimini meeting for giving me the opportunity to give this presentation today. Today I would like to talk about the discovery of the other. The Library of Alexandria is known as the spirit of knowledge, and it looks like it presents a new current of thought, of philosophy, of knowledge, and of science in the Middle East. In this, it recovers the spirit of its ancient version, which was established as an academic institution outside the religious temples, so that knowledge and the resulting truth be acquired through human experience and not through religion established by a faith that goes beyond any kind of rational demonstration. The inauguration and the relaunch of the library in 2002 represented a historic event, an exceptional event in the life of Egyptian people. And this immediately raised a lot of questions about the old library, which is very well known in the world. So the Egyptians discovered the existence of a historic time that was forgotten or even neglected. Even in school books, it is treated quite briefly. From here, the Library of Alexandria started a program to revive this epoch that has been forgotten about its Greek past. The Ptolemaic, the successors of Alexander the Great, were not an occupying power in Egypt. They were the sovereigner of Egypt, a place, a country where there used to be a big Greek community since the time of the 26th Egyptian dynasty. The Greeks integrated in the life of the Egyptians and established villages and towns which were named with the Greek names. And some of these Greek people came from Italian cities. And even part of that science of the time was taken from the pharaonic past and was influenced by the pharaonic religion. And when Alexander the Great arrived in Egypt, he found an environment that was similar. He was familiar with that, and his successors found the suitable atmosphere to create a country with the identity uniting the spirit of the ancient Egypt and the ancient Greece. So the result was a new, different spirit that made of Alexandria the first global city in which different ethnicities were united with a lot of ideas and inventions housed in the library, so much so that Alexandria became the homeland of knowledge. However, since this period of time in the history of Egypt has been forgotten, even the bridge connecting Europe and Egypt, a bridge of history and civilization, has been forgotten in the memory of Egypt. Egypt looks at Europe with the eyes of those who look at somebody as a foreigner, and at the same time Europe looks at Egypt as a country outside its own system of civilization. That is why the reconstruction of the Library of Alexandria has been a wonderful opportunity to get the two civilizations closer again, and to reduce this gap, this distance that was present between the relations between Egypt and Europe. The reality now is that the European contributions to the modern Library of Alexandria are still well below the expected amount. And I'm not referring here to material contributions. I'm talking about theoretical and scientific contributions. Europe still proposes its own thinkers and philosophers in limited occasions, for example, as was the case with the contribution of Umberto Eco, who accepted to become member of the governing board of the Library of Alexandria and to give lectures at the library itself. We are still waiting for a new Alexander the Great that may guide this idea of a bridge of civilizations between these continents. Building a bridge between Egypt and Europe means canceling a gap, filling the gap that separates the Arabs from Europe. That's why at the Library of Alexandria, 3 languages are used in its activity: Arabic, English, and French. And now in the new phase of publication, the use of Spanish, Italian, and German also will be done to open wider bridges with Europe. This program of publications will address subjects about culture and the historical heritage of Egypt. And on the other hand, there's also a project of translation of European languages into Arabic. In the past, the library translated into Arabic different publications, and recently this program has been relaunched, and now there are many books that are being translated from Italian and from French and from Germany, despite the many obstacles, in a way or another, that are posed by the European exaggerations in terms of copyright. The interactions between Europe and Alexandria is also embodied in the launch of an exhibition, Arabs and Europe Interactions. This is part of the program of the Rimini meeting, and this exhibition set up in the Library of Alexandria last March received the support of the International Council of the Museums, ICOM Europe, ICOM Arab, and ICOM Egypt. And the subject of the exhibition was a shocking one. It attracted the attention of the media, the Arabic media. The Crusades and the European-Arab conflicts are interesting topics. And this is what remains in people's memories. But for the first time, what we find in this exhibition is what unites the two civilizations, the relations from which artistic elements are generated. And this expresses the interaction between the two shores of the Mediterranean. The quest for common factors and coexisting is the basis on which the Library of Alexandria proposes its own philosophical visions in interacting with the other, contrary to other institutions that tries to highlight the differences and the conflicts to start a dialogue. This means that the Library of Alexandria seems an exception, and this exception will build over time a new current, especially because with the limits and the restrictions within the framework of the digital globalization, does not really prevent the other from looking the other and to find him or her in the web, ideologically demonized by the extremists. The opposition to this lies in the great effort, the prompt effort by the Library of Alexandria to let us know and discover again Europe. We want to answer to a number of questions. Is Europe a traditional enemy or a historical partner? If we ask this question to extremists, they will say that Europe is a traditional enemy. But for us, from the Library of Alexandria, Europe is a historical partner. And why is it a historical partner? Undoubtedly, the mixed blood between the north and the south of the Mediterranean can respond and convince the Egyptians about the answer. Greek blood flows in the veins of Egypt as much as Italian. There's Italian words that are part of the Egyptian dialect, and this is the case from the remote past. We, who belong to Egyptian generation, see Cleopatra as an Egyptian symbol, but Europeans see her as an incarnation of romanticism and historical relations. This shared culture was stronger than the papal orders that prohibited commerce in Egypt in the Mamluk era. But the reality was that that ban was not strong enough because the Egyptians used to see Genoa and Venice as something more than business partners. That is why we are trying to create a research program about the trade relations between Alexandria, Genoa, and Venice. The Center of the Islamic Civilization in the Library of Alexandria carries out work of rediscovery in the profound experience of Italy in Egypt until the 19th century. The Mamluk decree was discovered in the city of Fua, showing that many traders were present from Italian cities. So maybe this means that many Italians infiltrated in Egypt long before, but this is still subject of a debate because the archaeological missions of Europeans still focus on the pharaonic civilization and overlooks excavations in the archaeological hills at the north of the Nile Delta, despite the interaction between Europe and Egypt were so much extended at that time. So maybe the archaeological missions will be started in those areas after the Library of Alexandria completes an atlas of the sites that needs to be explored. There was a Greek port that connected Egypt to Europe, and this needs to be explored. So the knowledge of Egyptian knowledge about Europe is still limited as much as the European knowledge of Egypt. So both parts need to rediscover the other. But this rediscovery needs a reform of knowledge, and this reform is taking place in the Library of Alexandria upon three pillars. Future studies, there is an important field of study that must be rooted in the Arab and Egyptian societies. These are still studied separately, but for the first time there is an institutional project aiming at building the future knowledge and not just carrying out futuristic studies. The lack of knowledge led to the lack of knowledge of this, and so the translation of scientific subjects into Arabic is fundamental, especially after the big project that was carried out by Denmark and Germany in these fields. New and young researchers will have to be trained, and their efforts will have to be stimulated. Also, studies in the sociology of religion are important. Religion has represented the spirit and the philosophy of societies in the Middle East, but very often it has been transformed into a political ideology with a negative influence on our societies. That is why studying the religious influence on our society and slowing down the negative consequences of the translation of religion in political ideology is something on which the library has worked so much over the last few years. And then classical studies from the humanities. The aim of this field is to study the elements that unite all the different studies in the humanities and the relation of these studies with the sciences. There are many new fields of study that needs to be studied in detail. For example, the sociology of internet, the influence of the digital revolution, and the philosophy of the digital era. The new program of the Library of Alexandria that we are announcing today is being carried out in the city of Helwan. And in this program, the relation between Egypt and Europe is being studied since the prehistoric era, especially looking at the Jewish people and the Egyptian people. But a society that was a society with different religions, and to the point that all those religions became one single society. This created tolerance in the Egyptian people with a spirit of cooperation and peace. And hopefully we will be able to complete this project successfully. Thank you.
Come anticipato,
as already said, what really strikes in this meeting is not that we have to go where the other is in order to have a dialogue, but you need to work in your own house, with your family, with your relatives, with your friends, in order to build the foundations of the bridges of meeting and dialogue. What the Library of Alexandria is doing today is of the utmost importance. It is a museum of religions. Why? Because history and the beauty of the monuments shown in this museum have to show the diversity that has generated the good of mankind. Reforming the books of schools, used by schools, build up the future of the country. This is of the utmost importance. Translating from European languages into Arabic. Enable Arabic-speaking young people to read about Western civilization and philosophy, so that they can understand by reading these books this civilization, which is different. So it is very important to build bridges. It's not two opponents that try to meet when building bridges, but we need to work inside our own house first and foremost. I met a great person in 2002. A person who is so great, but at the same time so humble, who traveled around the world to spread his message. Message not of tolerance, but of love for others. A person who has recently left our world. However, he will still be recalled in this world for a long time, because this person has generated in other people's heart the love for others. And this is Mr. Roberto Fontolan, whom I ask to introduce his personal experience when he met this wonderful person. Now, since it was first organized, the meeting was a place for construction. It was designed and wanted as a house of glass and light, and as a welcoming port where ships land, arrive. And I would like that ship to stay there, to be able to arrive in the port so that the people can go down. A port that was conceived, designed, and wanted as a welcoming port where ships arrive. And our ships can leave from there with yet another friend. Over these years, we've had many companions, many friends, many people were involved. Not only companions, but also friends and masters of constructions, captains of peace. And I will speak about one of them, one of the greatest ones, who once told me, I've never met Father Giussani, but I see the meeting and I can see his greatness. And I'm speaking about Cardinal Jean-Louis Thoran, who passed away a few weeks ago, right after his journey to Saudi Arabia. The Cardinal was long Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Vatican City when John Paul II was Pope, and then he was President for the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. He was a man that worked very hard despite his disease. I saw him last time, right before Easter. I wished him good Easter with a chocolate egg, not books or papers. He was smiling, but he was suffering. And he was continuously working very hard. He wanted to come back to the meeting. Years before, we made an agreement. He should come here every 2 or 3 years. And 2018, he should have been here. He should have come back to the meeting. We would have met him after his journey to Riyadh. That was not possible, but that was possible only through his staff. However, as usual, he gave us suggestions for the meeting. In any case, how could he lead us over these years? In 2010, he presented in Rome the next edition of the meeting, and he said, the desire is much different from need. It is the tension of the human being towards the beloved object, whereas the need is attention towards something that we need. And once we get it, we no longer feel that desire. God has created us with many needs, but as a creature made in his similarity and resemblance, we need something more. And maybe what we desire and we long for is God himself. This was a pillar of his philosophy, his thought, and of his activity. This idea of the desire for God from us, human beings. The first time we had the cardinal at that time, it was Monsignor. It was 1998, 20 years ago. He held a wonderful conference on the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He was also gifted because he could teach in an excellent way. He was very clear. He was very simple. He was wise. He was very talented. And he said, the Church does not get the teachings of international texts, but from Christian revelation. And that explains the commitment of the Catholic Church for the defense of human rights. It is not a secondary priority. The commitment for all human beings results from that, results from the defense of human rights. The defense of human rights is of the utmost importance. He came back to the meeting 10 years later, in 2008, and in his speech, he said something very important, which I like recalling, because it was a sort of prophecy, as you will see. And at that time he said, last July, that was August 2008, the king of Saudi Arabia was deeply moved by the hearing that he had with Pope Benedict last October. And he summoned the representatives of Islam, of the Jewish religion, and of Christianity for a meeting. At the end of this meeting, we were able to share 4 common beliefs. First, we are all God's creatures. Therefore, there is unity in humankind. Second, the difference of religions and cultures is not a threat, it's an enrichment. Third, the family is the most important reality to convey values. Fourth, the religious dialogue is an essential contribution to peace. As a cardinal would say, it was not possible to say all that many years ago. And I think that this is the sign that God is blessing our efforts. God is patient. Freedom and God's design is given to man's creativity and freedom. He wants that the human family is just one single family. So you see the words God's patience in 2008, God's patience, which is based on human freedom and creativity. In 2010, and there was point number 4. In 2008 and 10, he talked about 2 very important points, answering the question, what can we do together, we all believers? 1, we can educate people to live all together. Since any religion is practiced within a community, our assembly of prayers and social activities of religious inspiration are places where we learn to coexist, to live with others, to respect their peculiarities. Every person must find the word healing among believers. Otherwise, there will soon be mottos and gurus who will be self-complacent. And that was said in 2010. Second, an ethical proposal. We must not be afraid to make a difference between the good and the bad, to recall the rights and duties of people and institutions, to contribute together to break walls. This is what is made possible by religious and ecumenical dialogue. It is possible to live difference through brotherhood. This is the only way to go from the fear of the other to the fear for the other. In 2012, he talked about religious freedom. Now, let's pay attention to that, because it was very precise. I'm not going through the whole list, but it is important to get to know all the details. So in the website of the meeting, you have all these texts, so please read the text of 2012, because knowing all these points is very important, because that shows a great human wisdom. The first 2, the right of having one's own religion, or not to have a religion, or to change it, or to give it up. No discrimination based on religious or religious beliefs. And then there are many more points. And then he said something else on the state. Then he mentioned the state, and he said, public authorities cannot impose nor prevent religious belief, nor disseminate the destruction of religion. They have to claim religious freedom as a civil right, and they have to ensure its exercise. What is at stake is the common good. The state has to be neutral. It must not be indifferent. It must not be hostile, and it must not identify itself with a religion. If a religion, because of history, has particular links with a nation, the state can support that religion, but without other believers to be discriminated against, especially if they belong to a minority. And I do like recalling what the Cardinal told us over the years. Why is religious freedom precious? Because, as he said in 2013, is just the freedom of the human being to choose their own relation with God and to decide to live consistently, accordingly. That requires the human being uses the reason and acknowledges the existence of God. But he must have freedom of thought to do so. Choosing or deciding to have a relation with God is the most important thing that anyone can do. You have to have a relation with God. This is why this choice and decision must be implemented without any kind of imposition. And in 2015, for the last time, we heard Cardinal Toran on this stage. And this is the last minute of his speech. We now have a video on that.
Se non c'è il sonoro, ditemelo che lo leggo.
In our plural societies, the religions and their believers must have solidarity with everyone else. And they have to tackle a triple challenge. The first is the duty of identity. The second is the courage to be others. And third is to be sincere in their intentions. That way, we will find out that the future is but the present, enabling us to make God's design come true, as in to make any human being happy. So I want to thank you all, members of this movement of community liberation, that every year come here to Rimini in order to share the joy of knowing who we are and where we're heading to. Thanks to you who opened the door to anyone come and see God is not dead. Thank you.
Sono sicuro che il Cardinal Turan
I am sure that Cardinal Turan would have loved to be here with us today to continue his dialogue. This dialogue was started in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, with His Excellence Mohammed bin Abdul Karim Al-Issa. As I said at the beginning, we do not invite guest speakers just because of their high role, but first and foremost because of the persons they are. Apart from the friendship with Cardinal Turan, as an Arab, there was a significant gesture on his part. He invited Cardinal Turan to his place and to his country. So apart from this friendship, I won't tell you the whole story. There is a very long CV. The most basic thing he has done was to be the Minister of Justice of his country. But I would like to emphasize other things. A law expert who submitted great reforms in the legal system of Saudi Arabia. A law expert that has always supported the reforms, and he wrote many, many books. And the most part of these books are about human rights. A scholar of Islam. He has a very high-profile role in Saudi Arabia. And today, again, it was published in the newspaper La Repubblica that he refuses Wahhabism, Salafism, all the extreme forms of Islam. That's what he has always stated publicly. So we have a person here who I have invited much more because of his institutional role. The Muslim World League represents more than 50 Islamic world countries, and he is the elected president of this organization. And apart from mentioning many charitable activities of the Muslim World League, I wanted to ask you a question. As Muslims, we do nothing in our life. We do nothing in our life without starting it by saying, in the name of God, the merciful. And this word, merciful, the name of God, have the same origin of another word that is Rachanam, which means the womb of the woman. So Islam tells us that we cannot do anything in our daily life. We cannot eat, we cannot drink, we cannot play, we cannot work without reminding ourselves that we do this because of the love of God, for God, and the love for all those who come from the womb of the woman, that is Eve, that is humanity, humankind. How do you find this value of mercifulness, of mercy in your life and in the works of the Muslim World League? Can you tell us about this?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أولا أنا سعيد.
Praise to God Almighty, who made us meet with you in this beautiful city. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight to talk about our commonalities. We continue to say that 10% of our commonalities, common points, can make a peace come true in this world. As for your question on mercy, I will give you a short answer. I can tell you that mercy is the real spirit of mankind. Mercy is everything beautiful we've got in our life. Mercy means stability, means agreement and peace. Whatever is beautiful in our life is connected to mercy. When we act with mercy, we respect all rights and freedoms. We can understand all ideas and we can respect them. When we have the right mercy, the right kind of mercy, we will have implemented all the different meanings of mercy. There is no real life without mercy. People cannot live together, cannot coexist without mercy. There can be no peace without mercy. Man is the one deciding to be human or not human according to the mercy he has in his daily life. Not just speaking, but through facts. There are leaders in mercy who explain to us and speak to us about the different meanings of mercy. The meanings which I will summarize through my words, although I would need a much longer time to do that. Now, following up to what has been said on Cardinal Jean-Louis Thuran, I can say that we were very struck when we heard about his death. To us, he was a symbol of dialogue and coexistence. He dedicated all his life to peace and to dialogue, freedom, and coexistence. We've been happy to host him in Saudi Arabia. The Muslim World League invited him on that occasion, and I had the honor to go with him during all his visits. And we took a lot of advantage from his wisdom. He's a great man. We signed a cooperation agreement with him in Riyadh between the Muslim World League and the Papal Council for Interreligious Dialogue. That date has to be recalled and respected. And we should recall the wisdom and the human values that we learned on that day. Now, before starting my speech, I want to thank the Italian people and recall all the victims of what separates civilizations. That makes us all sad.
نحمد الله جل وعلا الذي جعلنا نلتقي بكم.
Let's thank God who make us meet you today in this beautiful city at his international conference, whose activities deserve a lot of admiration and appreciation. The will of our Creator has decreed for human beings to be diverse in their colors, languages, religions, creeds, ideas, and cultures, which were included and described by God's words in the Quran, saying, God honored the children of Adam. This represents a divine honor, mercy, and justice to all human beings without any exclusion. But were people pleased with this mercy and justice, divine justice? Only the ones with pure hearts, full of love and goodness, were satisfied and looked at this human diversity as an enrichment that promotes dialogue, coexistence, cooperation, and peace. While the evil hearts were not satisfied and launched hatred and ignited wars and injustice and classified people on the basis of racism and exclusion and raised the clash of civilizations as a slogan, and claimed that conflict is the basis of our planet rather than peace and harmony, and claimed that diversity means clashes, and declared or implied that superiority and dignity should be limited to a specific religious, ethnic, or partisan group. These concepts, despite the troubles they caused to humanity, to mankind over the past history, and despite the lessons of its painful history on others, These concepts, I was saying, are still insisting on this inhuman and illogical obsession. It is wise to learn lessons from history, or else they will be the first to pay the price, no matter how long their deceitful victory will last. It is incumbent on us to acknowledge groups that have reached this intellectual deterioration based on extremist religion or philosophical convictions. We continue to say that there are no extreme religions. In all religions, there are extremists, as there are philosophies calling for nonsense. Rather than calling for philosophical thoughts. In the name of all the Muslim peoples united in the Muslim World League, we have talked about the importance of clarifying the truth of Muslim religion, loving, coexisting, having the dialogue and cooperating with everyone after the isolated extremism of Islam has tried to exploit it by wicked, foolish, and ignorant people. Any religion which is not in line with life cannot survive for more than 1,400 years, as occurred to Islam. Islam is still one of the religions with the largest geographical distribution and the fastest growing one. Islam today has more than 1.8 billion believers, understanding the precepts of God on the variety of religions, thoughts, and cultures, and considers coexistence, oneness, tolerance, and peace as high ethical values inside their religion. Muslims believers can see these values enshrined in the noble Quran and in the Prophet's precepts. They are against anyone misusing their holy texts, proposing misunderstanding or distorting their meanings for other purposes. It is not logical nor right to simplify this religion which has hundreds of millions of believers to only extremists, only an extremist category that, according to the Muslim World League statistics, has just one extremist member for every 200,000 moderate Muslims. The religious and cultural diversity of mankind is undeniable. Whatever the distance, the emptiness, the vacuum separating the different groups, we cannot transform the world into an area of conflict. This diversity is part and parcel of the precepts of our glorious Creator, and never has to clash with the importance of coexistence, cooperation, charity, and passion towards all as a prerequisite to live in freedom, peace, and unity. They will not stop, even if the wise and savants call for a necessary sovereignty of our common moral and human factors. ensuring peace and solidarity in our world. They are successors of the wicked people of the past, the extremists and terrorists that history has always known in every time, in every place, in every religion. History, in its happiest pages, has made immortal those who have committed sacrifice to fight against hatred, racism, and all the forms of injustice. History, with its right logic, has overthrown the wicked people who have raised the flag of hatred and oppression against mankind out of religious, ethnical reasons or for material goals. We are aware of the existence of mutual stereotypes among some nations, peoples, and cultures, based on the misunderstanding resulting from the lack of dialogue. This is what, in most cases, leads us to use information coming from one single source. On behalf of the members of our organization, the Muslim World League, on behalf of the 1.8 billion Muslims, we convey to the world a message of Islam based on the nobility of the soul and on the values of peace, praying that dialogue, with its deepest meanings, can replace conflict. Praying that the understanding based on mutual respect can offset hegemony and supremacy, which have collapsed before divine justice. In our world, we will not forget other topics representing the most important part of the process of constructions of bridges of peace and human solidarity, as, for example, the rights of minorities, women's rights, and human rights in general.
وكذلك موضوعات الهجرة والاندماج.
As well as topics such as migration, integration, the importance of integration, human trafficking, poverty, ignorance, and so on and so forth. These topics require more efforts from us all. In this context, the World Organization, close to the Muslim World League, operating to promote help and development worldwide and distributing hundreds of millions of dollars every year, give a human dimension to the charity activities with no religious, ethnic discrimination. Our Islamic precepts and our moral values can confirm all that. The Muslim World League provides all these services in close coordination with the governments of all countries where it operates. We have strong relations with other religions and schools of thought, and with all of them, we have organized events. We have paid visits to them. We have made agreements representing and supporting our common values. To conclude, let me thank the organizers of this special conference meeting that gave me the opportunity to speak about Islam on behalf of its world organization, the Muslim World League. consisting of hundreds of millions of Muslims, with its headquarters in Mecca, a destination of Muslim prayers and a symbol of a spiritual link uniting all of the Muslims. Thank you for your very kind participation.
Veramente bellissimo questo.
How beautiful this long applause. This long applause is really, really beautiful. We are not able to give testimony if we are not able to acknowledge other people's testimony. And this applause is evidence of the fact that the testimonies brought to the meeting are true, because only those who see truth, only those who can recognize truth are able to see it. I remember the story of a university student, a very religious young person who was a friend to a girlfriend, eating together, going to the movies together. And one day, this girl goes to him saying, "Well, I have hidden something. We have such a big friendship, and so I can't really keep it anymore." She sort of thought that he would get angry at her because she was a lesbian. He was a religious guy, so she expected a bad-tempered reaction. Maybe he would have got angry or sorry about the stereotypes. But this guy asked a question, and I always tell this story because it so much struck me. He asked a question. "But are you only this? Are you just this? Are you just this?" There is a proverb in Italian and in Arab saying that love is blind. Because when someone is in love with someone else, cannot really see the flaws and the defects in the other. But I say that love is knowledge, because only knowledge can take us beyond the defects and the flaws of the other. That's the kind of sight that we need.
Lo sguardo che ripresenta questo meeting.
That is discernment, and the sight represented by the Rimini meeting and the space of testimony represented by this Rimini meeting is the biggest thing, and it is independent. And this independence depends on you, on your donations in favor of this meeting, to continue to be a space for testimony and to keep this courage alive, to do things even when we go against the trend. So donate now to the meeting to maintain such independence and to preserve this space that is able to welcome anyone of all colors. Thank you so much for your presence.